the stories to keep tracking as we continue monitoring the COVID-19 pandemic here at home and further afield. For that purpose, we're joined by our managing editor, Zain Semaar, who's got, of course, the insight to help us make sense of these developments. Zain, always great having you with us. How are we treating the story today?
Thank you, Ayanda. So today our reporter Malungelo Boy will be speaking to residents of Zandspruit informal settlement, who's basically demanding that there be more policing in their community. That they are saying that there's very little education awareness programs that has been going on. You'll also remember that this community is an informal settlement largely made up of foreign nationals. So they are saying that they've been neglected in this efforts by the Gauteng government to try and stop the spread of coronavirus.
Right.
So we're looking at that community day. We'll be speaking to some community leaders there. Also our reporter Sipa Kema will then in turn bring you the latest about the Gauteng Provincial Command and their update. It's expected to happen at 12 o'clock, so tune into Newzroom Afrika at that time, where we'll bring you the latest about the Gauteng Provincial Government's latest efforts around COVID-19. Also, Sindisiwe Twala will be going out today to Dube Hostel, rather. So we're looking at the hostel and the food collections, but not the food collections in as much as the conditions on the ground at Dube Hostel. We're looking at the overcrowding situation there, whether it's possible to actually, or the challenges rather related to social distancing, and the big thing that is emerging, and that is the question around food and around whether people have enough to eat. And as you've correctly pointed out, a lot of people have planned up till today.
Right.
And so the people who are hustling on the very low border line of the economy and of existence, those are the people that are suffering most. So we see a lot of calls coming in for food parcels. We see a lot of efforts being made by government and other institutions to start delivering food to the poor and most vulnerable. And that's one of the big stories for us today.
And I guess what's most concerning are, an undertone of this being yet something else being politicized in the country. I mean, we've seen in Termfontein yesterday, and Balita Tanya, I think, was on that story,
yes,
where residents were actually saying that the food parcels are being distributed according to the constituencies through which they form, which is obviously completely, even morally reprehensible,
yes,
considering the kind of environment we're working in.
Absolutely. Also in Durban, Karinda Jigmahan will bring us the latest, Ayanda, on the hospital in Kingsway Hospital in Amanzim Toti. Second hospital to be closed down. Medicare clinic here in Johannesburg also being closed down. Quite concerning that these places where who are at the forefront of fighting the virus and of treatment of patients are now also being spaces and places that's infected and that are at risk.
So it's the second hospital in KZN.
Yes.
And, it certainly raises questions about what on earth is happening in that province, because even just yesterday, 6 of the 7 fatalities are all in KZN.
Yeah.
And that's a province that already had the highest fatalities in the country insofar as COVID-19 is concerned.
And even more questions around what kind of precautionary measures or not have been taken at these private institutions. So you remember leading up to COVID-19 and the lockdown, everybody was speaking about public health and the ability of public health to absorb some of these cases and treatment. But we've seen now it's mostly private institutions that have come under risk or that have been, but that's also understandable given that private institutions are accounting for the most amount of tests being conducted at the moment. So it's kind of understandable that these institutions would be most at risk.
It's interesting you say that, because yesterday I came across a report where one lady detailed how a mother with underlying conditions, including chronic illnesses, went to I think what it's a Medicross in Morningside.
Yes.
Absolutely wasn't tested, and they had already, discovered several people had the virus and was discharged and allowed to go back home.
Yes.
Needless to say that she's now contracted the virus, and there's obvious concerns about her life because she's currently in ICU. So, even though, of course, they account for more tests, a whole lot more people are saying that even on the most basic level, it appears the checks and balances are just simply not there.
Not in place.
And they're hoping for the best, and perhaps that's why we're here.
Sure. A last story that I think I should mention that's on our diary today is Atim Tongana will be covering the court case between the Legal Resources Centre and the City of Cape Town. So the Legal Resources Centre is basically representing residents of Mpoweni in formal settlement, where we've seen the City of Cape Town evicting residents.
Right.
They're claiming that they're not evicting, but it's an already existing court order that they're executing. The big question, though, that the administration there is not answering is why are they choosing to effect that court order now, in the time of COVID-19, when they are supposed to be assisting people rather than evicting them and creating more problems in terms of its own efforts to manage COVID-19 and the effects thereof.
Yeah, I mean, one has to wonder whether it didn't foresee this fallout,
yes.
right? Because now it's a complete mess, even at the level of perception. People are asking questions about whether the city has enough sensibilities to be able to be empathetic enough to the poor, you know. And there's a whole backdrop to it, of course. Remember their bylaws and how they treated homeless people in the city centre, etc., etc. So this is certainly not at the very least, a good PR exercise for the City of Cape Town.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look at how the newspapers are dealing with the stories today. The Business Day is reflecting on another ongoing story. Of course, we had heard threats from the public sector, from public servants, essentially, after we heard that they're not going to get the increases that were agreed upon back in 2018. It appears, of course, that those threats are sort of being more accentuated today. We're hearing that the first batch of public servants, including nurses, pharmacies, lab technicians, were all crucial, of course, to the battle against COVID-19, received their salaries, and it's been confirmed that there actually hasn't been any increase. So we obviously had Maishinganye from COSATU also speak to us yesterday, to our colleague Kathy Mushlahlana, again, digging in their heels and pushing back against the no increase, for lack of a better term. And again, there are very serious concerns about what would happen to this country, given the kind of forecast we saw from Professor Salim Karim a few days ago, if those at the front line decide to down tools. And it appears that the threat is becoming a bit more real. As we approach, the end of this period, so to speak.
Ayanda, the Sowetan this morning choosing to go with a picture of people having received food parcels, and it's a headline that says 7,000 a day call to ask for food in Gauteng alone. Basically, the department saying that they're getting up to 7,000 calls a day for food assistance. So a beautiful picture there about people accepting or getting food parcels. Another story that I think is going to develop in the next few days is the school story. So we remember that schools were actually supposed to open yesterday or the day before, the 14th of April. And as a result of the extension of lockdown, we still don't have any clarity moving forward about when schools will open, how they will open, what kind of measures are in place. And we're expecting Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga to come up with some of these plans later in the week.
Absolutely. Now, I want to take attention to another article in the Business Day, if I can go back to it very quickly. I'm not sure if you're familiar with TikTok.
Yes.
You are? Okay, this is great.
Apparently that's a Chinese app that is taking the world by storm at the moment.
And nobody would have guessed. So it's a popular short video app, essentially, where you can do short videos and you'll post it online, etc., etc. And I guess with people having more time on their hands, a whole lot more people are flocking to that type of platform and are really using their creativity to share a whole range of things, including their personal experiences of lockdown, etc., etc. In the midst of the jobs bloodbath and everything that's happening, TikTok is hiring. They're looking for about 10,000 new employees to obviously meet the demand that's come from using this app. An absolutely remarkable development in the midst of everything else that's happening. And I guess it kind of shines the spotlight on the companies that are, I guess, doing well in the midst of the lockdown. Companies for which it makes sense to have the world under lockdown. And we'll certainly have a digital expert later on in the show to speak about some of these companies, including Zoom as well, who we know has obviously also seen remarkable growth during this period because a whole lot more people are using video conferencing for their engagements.
I've seen, though, that Google has suspended its Zoom services because of concerns about the security around the platform. Another platform that is taken off completely is Google's Hangouts. That is increasingly becoming more popular as people seek ways to stay in contact and to continue working, essentially.
Absolutely. So we'll bring all of those things to you if we can. We have run out of time very quickly, and we'll definitely make sure that we bring you all these stories throughout the course of the day. Zain Semaar is our managing editor here on Newzroom Afrika. Thanks very much indeed.
Sure.
So.